Hi, beauties. So, I just want to talk about this twin flame journey, this ascension journey, and what it means as you align with your soul, how magical days become. Because even me, I'm mind blown. Even today, I was mind blown, which is what I wanted to share this little clip of an interaction that I had with this gentleman. It turns out a big part of my path is, and I always knew that I was making, like a small difference in the lives of just these random strangers that I was interacting with, but I guess I didn't really put as much value in those interactions as there is. And today's example is a really big one of those. So, to try to catch you guys up as quickly as possible, after being on a false twin flame journey for a number of years, I aligned with my soul and my purpose. And then I ended up aligned with my true twin flame, who had been in my life a lot longer, the whole time, and kind of always in my heart I knew. So it really was my truth. And then arriving here, things have just been kind of haywire, as we were both being triggered into some really, really deep healing, which, is part of the path, and I knew. But the other things that are happening now, like as like a, I guess, byproduct, or I don't know, just like, which are very much aligned, and this story will be proof, are just crazy, And so I moved into a place. Right before I moved in, my son and I had been living in a hotel. It was getting quite expensive and not roomy at all. And so I was desperately looking for a house. And I did a reading for myself after I'd applied for a couple of places, and I laughed as I said to my child, well, the cards say that I'm going to make the wrong choice out of like desperation and lack for wanting to take care of my children. So obviously, lack of finding a place, because this market is crazy here. And that in the midst of that interaction would possibly kill me. And I remember laughing, like, what's going to possibly kill me? Well, actually, what happens is turns out I moved into an infested apartment. And had I followed my guidance that said, just be patient, have faith, 2 days later, I got offered the place that we wanted more. After I'd already, given her all of the money, moved in and everything. And so it was said and done. I went through the 3 months of the most nightmarish hell I could ever imagine, because I moved into an infested apartment, which turned out to have a very rare ant infestation that only I discovered after being almost deathly ill, actually, and having nobody even willing to take me seriously. It took me involving 2 lead entomologists in the province to actually even figure out what was going on with me. It was just so silly. But in that path, I was faced with a significant amount of corruption again, and just my eyes were just open to all of these people that were just lying and scamming and just like abusing people, even in the medical system, like even at the hospital. It was just nuts, like the amount of light work that I was doing in such a short amount of time, even throughout being so ill, was just so crazy. And so, I was getting a lot of really hard and good lessons in that short time. And then I got an Airbnb after moving out of the apartment, because I still hadn't found our perfect house. And so at random, and I say at random because the way that I select my Airbnbs, I would hope that any conscientious single parent would do, and based on space versus price, all those things. And so I found an affordable short-term Airbnb. I check into the Airbnb. My son's are both with their grandparents right now on holidays, with separate grandparents, and so it's just myself. And I get in, and I start to discuss things with the owner. And I always just tell everybody, I'm on one of those crazy twin flame paths. While her and her boyfriend start talking to me, she goes, he's told me that for years, that he's my twin flame. Now, another little sidebar. In my journey, I have now facilitated, as part of my purpose, the reunions, not always technically unions, but 2 unions of twins, and 2 of which had no idea, had never heard of twins, and I barely even mentioned twins to them at all, but my 2 cents, my interactions with them over whatever times, served its purpose. And they're both aligned, 2 pairs now, both the divine feminines are aligned with their soul purposes It's crazy. One's working with children. Like, it's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. And so I laughed and I said, well, I assure you at least one of you is, I kind of told her what they both were, but now I'm like not 100% sure. For sure, there is a possibility that they're, no, I think they are twins, but just one of them's got a lot more work to do in terms, well, they both, everybody does, but anyways. But it was just nuts, and I was just like, wow. And then I looked like, oh my goodness, proximity wise, I was less than 230 meters, like still am staying there, less than 230 meters from my true twin, who we're right now in a period of, I guess, mini separation, not really, but still in contact. And so I was just like, what the frick am I doing here? Like, why am I so close? It's just so funny. But then I'm like, well, if I'm staying with twin flames, then sure, I know that I'm divinely led exactly where I'm supposed to be. Then, the day after I get there, I'm meditating and doing my Kundalini yoga practice in the yard. And her landlord, who uses the garden in her yard, comes over. And turns out he's 75. He's an older Indian gentleman, and his wife, the two of them came over. And he starts talking to me, asking me what I'm doing, and asking me questions, and then they leave. And he comes back later that afternoon and he says, can you read me? Like, I didn't have any cards or anything. I just told him, yeah, and I read him. And he goes, wow, can we talk later? And I said, yeah, of course. And then he came back over and asked me if I would go over there and have tea and talk. So I said, yes, absolutely. So I went over there yesterday with him and his wife. Most of you probably don't know because it's not something I discuss or advertise really, but I do have it available on my website, and it's something that I do just as divinely led to. And these people are always led to me. Like this counseling. I am a second-year psychology student. I don't, obviously I can't guarantee any results of any sort of kind, but I do a very special type of psychic counseling, right? Like a very intuitive-led, deep counseling. And so that's just what I was there for. I didn't know. I brought my cards. I wasn't sure if they were going to ask me things, if I was going to need to use cards or what was going to happen. But I spent the 2.5 hours there, and it got so deep. Like, I mean, like, deep. And I'm going to now be, a non-official, but yes, family counselor / spiritual advisor for the dad, who's 75. From India. Like, so he was the one that was like telling me things about what he recognized in me. He's like, there's things about saints, and it was just blowing up my ego a little bit. It was really nice to feel valued in the work that I was being able to just so naturally provide. It just felt so like no big thing. Like, this is what I've always been doing for like my whole entire life. But it was just such a beautiful interaction. And then he goes, well, this is what you do. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, should I pay you? And I said, well, not for this one. I said, but yeah, going forward, absolutely, And so even as a thank you, he's taking me for breakfast tomorrow. I said I'd come back. The wife asked me to come back for them both, and I said I would another time. So I have a hair in my eye; it's kind of bugging me. And but I looked right at her and I said, "But I want to yell at him alone tomorrow." But I was kidding, But I meant coaching alone. And so yeah, we're gonna have a breakfast date at 8:30 in the morning, and I just left there like feeling so freaking fulfilled, serving my purpose. Nobody would really understand this. But it's just one after the other. So here, this all happened in a span of 48 hours. Well, then another gentleman checks into the Airbnb, and I start chatting with him. And within about a half an hour of talking, and he's just like looking at me like so in awe. I mean, I mind blow some people just like with my soul shock because I just all the things. But he was really taking it in, like on a deep, deep level. And he says to me, it's really refreshing. He goes to like engage in this deep of conversation. He's like, most people, he's from Iran, he's Persian, and he said most people that I've found in Canada, he's been here for 8 months, aren't so friendly. And I said, unfortunately, we're trying to change that the best we can, but let's see why, people can't just be cool. But yeah, things got like really, really deep too. And then he started asking me about my path. I gave him my card, I told him some things, and he got it. He's been on his own path, not knowing, exactly what was going on. But on his path nonetheless, making really big changes and following his soul. And so, like, it was just nuts what I was seeing, like, because when I energetically lean in, like, psychically lean into people, like, I really can see tentative, like, future things, based on where they're at and stuff. And it was just really freaking cool to see what this guy's just got it, and he just didn't really wasn't conscious of any spiritual path per se. He just really understood true spiritual truth, like be a good human, compassion, love. And he said the words to me before I could spit them out. Love is the answer to everything, is what he said to me. I just about started crying like a fucking baby, like actually. And so then that happened, and so now we've had such a deep conversation too, and the things that I've told him about what I saw, in his future and things, it's crazy the connections that I've made. And then we're leading to today. I'm walking around just beaming because I found the most beautiful house I could ever imagine. Very divinely led. I'd found a shit one first. Thankfully followed my guidance this time. That was the point of the first story in the beginning. Followed it, and then boom, at the last minute. If I had made a vision board, it would have been that. I look at how upset I am about this house. Actually, after the years that me and my kids have had on this journey with all of our karmic stuff, and I say that and you guys think it should be mine and not my kids. Unfortunately, that's not how the universe always works, so it's not always that cut and dry. But then today, I'm on the bus back to my Airbnb. I was getting on the bus to my Airbnb, and it was hot, and I'm standing, it's plus 30, and this young gentleman, just a few years older than my oldest son, maybe 18 or so, stood up and offered me his seat. And I thought it was really kind. I said, well, I can scooch over. And so I moved over, and he didn't sit, and I could tell and read. It was just out of pure respect. And then I see it in his hand, he had a little mini New Testament, and I said, hey, can I ask you a favor? And he took his headphones off, and he said, absolutely. And I said, could you please read me a passage from that book? Could you just flip to it for me, please, and read me a passage? And he was really, really happy and, honored to be able to share the Word of God with me. And so that in itself made me really happy. And he goes, may I? And I said, please do. And sit beside me. And as he did, the bus came. And so I said, would you sit with me? And he said, yeah. And so he sat with me. And I said, okay, pick it at random maybe. And he goes, well, actually, I'm just studying this Bible. I was reading something last night. Do you mind if I read you what I found really mind-blowing? And I said, yeah, please do that. Please read me that. And I said, do you mind if I record you? I said, just your voice. I said, so that I can keep this for later. And he said, absolutely. Let's look at that one together.
So it was very fascinating to me on how when Jesus, after living a sinless life, he was perfect not only in the eyes of man, also in the eye of God. And then even the high priest, they wanted to accuse him to get him crucified, but they couldn't find anything.
Of course,
because he was perfect. And then this happened, which is directly connected to us. There it is. So in chapter 18, they were trying to accuse him of something, of anything really. But then they accused him of him calling himself the Son of God, because he is the Son of God. And then
we're all the sons of God.
Exactly, but he was referring to himself as the Son of God, and then they didn't like that. But then the leader, Pilate, he said, but you have a custom that I should release someone for you at the Passover. Do you wish then that I release for you the King of Jews? He was being very sarcastic, calling Jesus. And then, therefore, they cried out again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now, Barabbas was a robber. So, instead of Jesus, they chose to have Barabbas released.
Yeah.
And it's like, this man was a robber.
Isn't that crazy?
Perfect.
Yeah, and the king was backing him as acting the robber. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm a divine channel, so I speak to God, Jesus, all of the angels. They speak to me in various forms, and so I channel messages and I put them on my YouTube channel. So I don't have any cards right now. Yeah, just look it up. Yeah, please. Yeah. And they'll be getting up. And you should check. I'll show you which one if you see it. So look, love, light, and lunacy. Right on the top. Yep, this one. Yep. And then if you click on it, I'll show you which video I want you to just check out. just only this one.
This one right here.
Yeah. Because
I'll check it out.
it'll blow your mind. Oh, I'll get on the next slide. It'll blow your mind.
From
a
what book?
Sikh, it's from a Sikh religious
Okay.
text.
Sorry.
But same story. And
story.
I've read that in the Bible already. And then I flip to it random, same thing, and I read it on the video. It's at the end, so if you want to skip to the end, I read it. You'll be like, wow, and you will believe more in God today from this meeting than you'll ever have before, I promise. I promise. When you watch that video.
Or did you grow up in a religious home?
No. No, I'm authentically led by them in the spiritual. They led me towards this path. God, angels, they on their own. I'm how they say it in the spirit only. I'm very much taught in the spirit.
This very much aligns with my path. I was ostracized by my entire old community based on my ex-karmic, who is a undiagnosed, full-on narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality psycho, but raised by two narcissistic parents on varying degrees of that spectrum, one more grandiose, one more vulnerable, even though, they both kind of intermingle. And then the corrupt community that then just backed them as I awoken and was full honest and full public with my complete spiritual path and my 100% commitment to this path as a light worker and as a child of God and as a twin flame and as somebody who's going to use her love to change this darn world. But now I'm doing that. And so now that I've come out, with my relationship with God taking its next level, right? And that's something that somebody told me at the beginning of this twin path when I'd first what the heck are twin flames? And then they said, no matter what, if you're honest with yourself and you're true to yourself, this path will lead you closer to God. And I couldn't even say God at that time, which you guys will see if you look at some of my older videos, even some of my older Archangel Decree videos. I back and forth say God and Source, to try to be accommodating, but really it was because that's where I was, being back and forth between being able to call it Source and God, just because I still resonated with God as I had perceived God based on previous religions, Christianity, etc., which nobody was wrong, even though everybody was not 100% correct. Everybody just did the best they could, perceiving the information that they could at the time, and whatever. But now it's God the Mother, God the Father, God the Child, God love. God is love. But I have a different, really deep relationship now with God. And that too has spurred the egos of many powerful and corrupt people. I don't understand why pure light reflects such darkness. But thank God, it's way more powerful. So when he read this passage for me, it blew my mind. And then because I'd shared a similar, not the same, but a similar story on one of my videos just from a couple of weeks ago with a passage from a Sikh religious text, I said to him, can I share this with you? Will you watch this, please? He did, and he will, and I know he has already. And I said, this interaction here between us two will definitely leave us both with more faith in God than we've ever had before. And that was true for both of us in that moment. I had a 5-minute interaction with that young gentleman who was just, maybe early on that path. If he was saying he was just first reading the Bible for the first time, he was quite young. And I did what I'm doing now. I cried a little. This path is so special. If you are true to you and you actually align with your soul, you will see this type of stuff happen more and more and more. And nothing has ever brought me as much fulfillment as this does. It's the most special thing I could have ever imagined. And I couldn't even have imagined this before. It's hard for me to answer that question when people ask me what I do. So I usually say as a joke, but I mean it. I love people. Strangers, whoever. I just love them. And I love you guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for being part of my journey.